So that is just one example of filtering routes during the redistribution process. We can see here an example for EIGRP now. When I look at this example for EIGRP, we see redistribute OSPF 10, providing the metric. It's mandatory with EIGRP, or we will not perform redistribution because the routes will have a metric of infinity while they're redistributed. And then we have distribute list 7, which would be referring to an access control list that is identifying those routes that will be redistributed in this case. And we're saying out OSPF 10. So those routes that we're redistributing from OSPF into EIGRP, I know it says out, it's kind of backwards here, but as we are redistributing from OSPF into EIGRP, then we will only redistribute those routes that are identified in Access Control List 7. But we can use distribute lists for other purposes, folks. Not just for the redistribution process. We can use a distribute list to simply filter the routes that we learn from our neighboring routers in EIGRP. Take a look at this example here. In this case, we've set up a distribute list without even using redistribution. So we're saying router EIGRP 100, distribute list 7 in serial 0. So in this example, what we're saying is any routes we receive from our EIGRP neighbor inbound on serial 0 only accept the routes that are listed in access list 7. Let's take a look at that in the live environment. Let's look at R3's routing table right now. Show IP route. Notice how R3 is learning about the 10110/28 network from both R1 and R2. Let's filter the route learned from R1. And there's two ways we could do this. We could go to R1 and we can set up a distribute list outbound saying do not advertise the 10110/28 network over to R3. Or we could go to R3 and say do not accept the 10110/28 network from R1. And so we would be applying it outbound on R1, the route filter using the distribute list, or we'd be applying it inbound on R3. Doesn't matter. It all depends on how you want to control the environment. So in this case, let's just go to R1. Let's control it from R1's perspective. Go in the global configuration mode. We're going to create our access list, in this case. Access list, just a standard one will do for us. Access list 1. And we will say deny, because we want to deny that particular route. And it's going to be 10.1.1.0.0.0.0. So the 10.1.1.0 network is going to be denied. And we'll go ahead and hit enter. And don't forget the implicit deny any rule at the end of an access control list. If I fail to identify the rest of the traffic or permit the rest of the traffic, then we will not send any routes over to R3 in this case. All of them will be filtered. Permit any. There we go. Permit any. So let's look at our access control list. Do show access-list. So here's our access list we just created. Deny 10.1.1.0 and permit everything else. Now let's attach this particular access control list to our EIGRP configuration. So router EIGRP 100, we're going to say distribute list. And in this case, it was access list 1. And we are going to say out. And out what? Out gigabit Ethernet So gigabit Ethernet 2/0. We should see the neighborship flap. And the reason why is because we've made a change to what we are telling our neighbor now. And there it is. If we go over to R3, R3 should no longer have this information right here. That should be completely gone now. And it is. Because we filtered it. We've told R1 not to advertise that over to R3. So not only can the distribute list be utilized for the redistribution process, as we've seen, that distribute list can also be used within that EIGRP autonomous system to control what our neighbors share with each other. It's route filtering. And how do we verify if a filter's been applied? If we go back to R1, we can use show IP protocols. Show IP protocols. Take a look at this right here for R1. It says we have an outgoing update filter. And this outgoing update filter is applied to gigabit Ethernet 2/0. And it's filtered by access control list 1. So if you want to look at access control list 1, show IP access list 1. There you go. And you can see the two matches. We are not advertising that 10110 route, but we're advertising everything else.